Hey guys, welcome to NODventures. This is of course episode 3, South Africa here, part 1, where we're going to be discussing some very important things. One of them, of course, being what is esports like in South Africa? This is a question I have asked myself quite a few times, and now it's time to ask some specialists from there. For that, I'd like to introduce my 3 amazing people who are going to join me on this podcast, Glenn, Snare, and Sam. Now, I'm going to start with Sam because she has done some incredible things, very similar to what I've really done in my field. She's a tech person, she's in gaming, she's a YouTuber, she's a blogger. In 2016, of course, she entered the scene and she's been growing leaps and bounds from there. You will be seeing her and have already seen her in a variety of esports events that have taken place. Hi, Sam, how are you? And how's everything going for you?
I'm good. I'm so we get to chat because, like you said, we've had similar paths, and I always get excited when I meet other women in the industry who've done similar things. So I'm fangirling a little bit here. So I'm just going to try and keep it inside.
It's so lovely to have you. I'm so glad you could join us. And she also has told me it's pretty cold out there. It's pretty cold. I know as Indians, we are getting really hot in our houses with 45 degrees Celsius, which takes me to my second guest. Glenn, how are you doing? Glenn,
I'm good.
Yeah, and how's the weather over there for you?
Actually, today was warmer. Like yesterday, I think last night was freezing. But today's actually been pretty good. So I've actually just got like a light hoodie on. So yeah.
Oh, you're lucky. You're still lucky still. Glenn, of course, he's a very big fan of video game and technology. He occasionally writes quite a bit on different topics related to esports and gaming. He puts out his point. It's come out in a lot of variety magazines and covers, so you guys can definitely check it out. We're going to be posting their social links right below their names, so don't forget to have a look at them. And of course, Snare, you've been awfully silent. I would like to introduce you. I have gone through your About Me section, and I was very enamored to see how you are a filmmaker. You also write a lot of poetry, you mix music and photography, and all that as a part of esports. So could you explain in your terms, what exactly is esports and gaming?
And I think there's definitely a distinction between gaming and the esports for me. I think the thing that really makes it prescient for me, like you're mentioning, there are a lot of different art forms that go just into making a good game and making a game that's sort of captivating, that brings you back wanting more. And something that I said in my About section was that gaming is the one art form of all the available art forms that the story cannot be told without you as an active participant. So you as the audience don't get to just sit back and watch the game unfold. You have to be a part of it. The stories that unfold, you are a part of them. You're helping to create them. And then when we go into the esports side, that's an entirely different ballgame because all the tools that come into making a good game, bringing in aspects of photography, decent aesthetics, good music, lighting, poetry, all these things come together and also in a way that allows you to create new stories, right? The thing about that makes esports is that all of us talk about the stories that come out of different events, that come from different teams, that come from the different conflicts that happen within different regions, etc. There's so many like small intricacies. You could basically write movies just about what happens with the personalities behind the scenes of esports in the teams that are playing the games. So in itself, it just becomes another layer of added narrative. So just a form of entertainment by itself that can't be compared to anything else. So for me, it's just esports and gaming are special things that there's nothing else in the world that can really be compared to.
Well, that is, of course, ladies and gentlemen, the most beautiful description I have heard about esports and gaming and combining everything together with art forms. And that, of course, brings me to my first question. And Sam, I'll start this with you, of course. You've been in the industry for quite a while. 2016 is when you started picking it up professionally. Could you give me a brief on the breakdown of history of esports in South Africa?
So I think South African esports has been around for a very, very long time. And it's kind of interesting because I think we only really look at it from sort of 2014, 2015, but it was around for years before that. For the most part, though, pretty much just in sort of like gaming cafe lands with maybe like 10 or 15 people. Then it kind of grew and we got these clans forming and they kind of came together and sorted out their own competitions. Once a year, they'd all meet in one space, which there was a really big event. It still happens every year called Rage. There was a basement and they used to go and play in the basement. That then kind of got, if you want, it was put into an actual league and there was an organizer that got involved, but they were playing in this basement for years before anyone really paid attention. Really exciting because at the end of the year, if you were the winning team, you got some mouse mats and maybe a keyboard, which was a big deal. And in the last sort of like 5-6 years, we've seen a lot of money thrown at the scene. We went through a stage where there was huge money being thrown, but we were still amateur. We hadn't really built a foundation. So the money was thrown at the scene, but it wasn't quite what it needed. And then it had a reset, and now we're seeing it grow again. It's still very much in its infancy, but a lot of those players that were there 10, 15 years ago, they're still in esports, they're still grinding at it, and they still haven't made it a full-time job. A lot of them are just doing this because it's their passion. We've seen a lot of players as well who were playing back in the day in those basements, who were playing in the sort of quiet areas. They've now moved into management roles, organizing tournaments, things like that. But it is still very much a new budding scene, if you like, if you compare it to other regions around the world.
That definitely makes sense. And Glenn, of course, I would like to understand from you, from the history of esports, right, in South Africa, what are the things that made you really get into the local part of esports when it comes to South Africa? Because internationally, it's a really big thing. If you go to the Western side, everybody's talking about it. It's got saturated. But when you look at India, you look at South Africa, it's still bidding more locally than even nationally. So how did you get into it?
I mean, for me, my entrance into esports is actually through League of Legends. That's when I first sort of started looking at competitive gaming and seeing sort of like how much was going on. And obviously that was from an international scene. I mean, I know South Africans are going to roll their eyes when they hear League of Legends because Snare, I saw your face. I saw your face and you gave me a look now. So League of Legends is kind of what made me sort of opened my eyes to competitive gaming and made me realize sort of people that there's like, professionals out there that were sort of looking at different games and going, cool, how's the best possible way to play this? And there was theory behind it. There was crafting. There was this entire new world. And so that's actually where I began and was kind of like in that world, and obviously kind of very detached. It was players that I didn't know, countries that I wasn't involved in. And then sort of through my experience there, I started sort of opening my eyes up a bit more to the local scene. So I definitely haven't been around as long as, others like Sam. He's been around for a while. But as I started sort of seeing what the people were doing here locally, I started thinking, this is something I really want to get involved with. And obviously I've been writing about games for over 10 years. And so sort of naturally I started sort of writing around sort of esports as well. And to Snape's point, they're two different things. In terms of sort of esports and gaming, often people try to kind of bring them all together, but they actually have a very distinct flavor, each of them, and a way of doing things and different stories behind each of them, a different ecosystem. And so obviously I'd gone in my bearings with gaming, and I thought esports is something really exciting, something really passionate that I want to be a part of. And to Snape's point, there's so many stories to tell. And as a writer, storytelling is one of my favorite things to do. I mean, I do that in my 9-to-5 job as well as a creative director. Storytelling is huge, and there are so many amazing, incredible stories to tell in the local scene. And both good and bad. I mean, you get your ups and your downs, and that's kind of what drove me to be involved in the local scene.
Interesting. And it seems very similar to how things work in India, honestly. We have these really passionate people who keep driving it till finally fix a pace. And then, we have organizations that come in and start bidding on teams. You have better tournaments and so on and so forth. But this is something where, you could bring in your way of looking at things, because when I look at India and South Africa, we both have this one thing in common of organizations coming out much recently than prior. So I want to ask you, how was the first organization actually created in South Africa?
So many organizations over the years that have sort of come in, phased in and out or whatever, but there's been the two long-running ones, because a lot of our scene's history can just be tied to the success of these two teams in particular within Counter-Strike. Without Bravado, Energy, and to some extent DC, without these two teams succeeding in, these three teams succeeding in Counter-Strike, we just don't have a scene locally. And it's funny how it started, because this was what Sam was mentioning earlier about people playing in the basements of certain conventions of so large lands. There was one particular pair of brothers. The two of them just started playing together. I think it was like 2006, 2007. Sam, you can correct me on that date. I'm not 100% sure with Demi and Sente. But this was like eons ago. And the two of them just played together a lot. And they were like, we should just have a team and then name it something. Keep playing as like together. We're brothers, whatever. Get all our friends together. And then year on year, they just kept winning at all the little lands that they kept going to. So they were like, well, we should stick together and keep playing as a unit, more like this. Bravado Gaming is the name of that organization. They were the first major organization that ended up happening that made a big dent into esports outside of like third-party organizers or anything like that. The other team that I mentioned, DC, that was just a crew of guys that just stayed together and kept winning everything. But Bravado were the first ones to have this idea of, look, we can actually have a brand. Like, it's not just us being good at a game, it's not just us exploring our passion, but this is something that can turn into something long-lasting for us as individuals as well. So that started, I think they made it official like 2008, 2009. And then since then, they were winning for 2-3 years. They were pretty much uncontested. There was nobody in the scene that even remotely could touch them. But then another organization started up called Energy Esports, and they were literally in direct response to Bravado. One of the ex-Bravado players, when they had a small falling out that side, went to Energy, they start that. And then suddenly you have competition. Competition breeds more competition. We have a budding and nascent scene now. And this started, like I said, in Counter-Strike, but them being able to do Counter-Strike more effectively. One of the other people that was connected to the Bravado brand was also a player who played Dota 2. And then as he's playing Dota 2, he's like, hey, guys, I have a lot of other South Africans who also play this game. We should just do tournaments with this. And Bravado, Andreas, being a smart guy, he's the owner of the Bravado organization, recognizes that, well, if I've got a crew of good players here and they're creating an entirely nascent scene, I can just do the same, make a similar investment in another arena. At the time in Dota 2, only Energy Esports, a direct competitor to Bravado in CSGO, they were the only big name in Dota at the time. And then Sense's like, well, I should do that too. Then more competition breeds. Suddenly you have a scene. And then out of nowhere, there's actual competition. Like, it took a while before there were additional tournament organizers. There was only one for a long, long time. Telkom was the only people that were putting money. They're like sort of a state-owned entity that also puts a lot of money into developing telecommunications for people that don't have the connectivity. They sponsored the large tech events where most of the people ended up going to be able to land in the basement. And then they look and they're like, wait a second, we have people that are doing nothing all day, but they're going to come here every single year, no matter what. This is the freest advertising in the world. Let's just, throw them a pretty penny every now and then. We'll throw them some mouses, some T-shirts, maybe give them a small ceremony where we give them like 1,000 Rand or whatever. And then this creates buzz, this creates boom. Now you have some content for people like Glenn to write about when they're writing in their magazines. Now you have situations where you have an event that's worthwhile of getting a Sam to show up and having to present this to an audience. And then out of nowhere, you've got a scene just with people getting tired of just beating their friends in the basement and wanting to be able to beat more people. And from there, now, I don't think we're at a full scene yet, but we're definitely building towards it. It's gonna the fact that we're as big as we are in as short a time as it's been compared to some other regions around the world gives me a lot of hope for the future.
But I think that's like a very it's a very trendy thing, right? If you look at all the previous teams that have formed because of a bond, they have always lasted much longer than all the newcomers who now just come for the money, they come for the fame. The Samco's got a report on the recording, but they come for the money, and it doesn't feel the same, even though they are also equally passionate, I think.
I mean, I do think it's more of it's become more professional now, because I remember there was that phase, and I mean, I was obviously in there as well, having those discussions where it sort of felt like CSGO started to stagnate locally to a degree, because people were saying people were keeping players on due to bonds and not going, hey, how do we build the best possible team? And I think that was, I mean, for me, that was such an interesting transition to see, as you started to see sort of the South African scene start to realize its potential and what we can do and all of those things. And it stopped being just sort of friends hanging out and doing cool things, but there was sort of like a business aspect to it. And obviously that comes with the good and the bad, right? I mean, when you're growing a scene, there's obviously a lot of growing pains. But I think, I think people started becoming more professional about it and more business orientated. And I don't think, Bravado would get to the heights that it did. And especially, at the combination of the team that went to the States, just doing it just through friendship. Do you know what I mean? I mean, and it's a meme that we always go, the power of friendship. But, I think that's what helped the scene grow to such a large degree that it has. But I think you had to have that transition where it stopped being friends, right? And again, not about being friends, but it was about actually creating a really professional, competitive integrity and really building a powerful scene that had really great results. And through doing that, creating something beautiful that people can enjoy as friends and creating friendship in other ways.
I was going to say, jumping off Glenn, what's interesting, because we were chatting about damage control and how like most of the top players came through them, but they had such an incredible they were just incredible. I'm speaking, they are incredible guys, and they were very grounded. They were just doing it for love, and it was something that they were very passionate about. And I think that because they were grounded, they kind of shared that with a lot of the players that came through them, that either had to beat them or that they played with. Those players went on, and sort of Bravado picked up a lot of them. And then when Bravado became more business orientated and let go of those players, when they were younger, went on to get their own MGOs going. So like our big MGOs now, like Goliath, Big Five, they all came from previous Bravado players who learned from Andreas, who had learned from DC. And I like the fact that that kind of grounded behavior and understanding that this has to be a business and you have to be professional, but you also need to be as loyal to your squad as you can and try to present yourself in a certain light. We've really seen that flow through. And so I do think there's bad that comes in the South African industry that we can obviously talk about in any industry, but I also think that there's a very strong foundation there from those sort of people that came before all of us.
So coming to you, Sam, of course, since you've been hosting quite a few tournaments in 2016, I would like to know from you, what are the games that are actually played as esport titles in South Africa, the old ones and the new ones, and your favorite?
So in South Africa, we actually have quite a diverse range. We've obviously got the favorites, CSGO. Dota's sort of died in the last year, I'd say, but we've had Dota as well. We've got a little League of Legends group that plays as well. Call of Duty. Most of these are quite small, but they're very passionate audiences. Overwatch, we have a small but passionate group. PUBG was very popular when it came out, but I think we've seen with the rise of PUBG Mobile, that has an incredibly supportive scene. Without a doubt, in my opinion, the biggest in terms of a player base and competitive interest is FIFA. So that's a really popular one as well. But also all the fighting games. So Street Fighter's a big one. Mortal Kombat's had a really good response. Tekken. So we've got quite a diverse range of titles. I've probably forgotten one somewhere along the line. So I apologize to whoever watching this who's very upset with me now. I've tried to mention all of them. So the big popular ones are there. But I definitely think fighting games and FIFA are huge ones. And what I'm starting to see a lot of now as well, especially here in 2020, is sim racing. We have a very engaged sim racing community. I think some of the Discords that I've jumped into, there's like 500 members, and they setting up their own rigs and racing. So I predict that will be the one that sort of blows up in the next few months. In terms of my personal favorites, CSGO is always going to be my first love. It's where I started. It's kind of that's my family. A lot of the kids that, when I call them kids, which makes me sound really old, but they were playing in my house with my brother. So I'm always going to have a little bit of a soft spot for them. Most of them have actually retired now, but for the most part, I think CSGO will always be my first love. But in terms of the South African audience, definitely FIFA and the fighting games, I think, have the biggest support right now.
Glenn, what do you think about League of Legends? It's not done much in India, honestly, and I think a similar story is showcased in South Africa. So I want to know what's happening with League. I also want to know how famous are mobile games, because in India, it's like become the next big thing now.
It had this upward trajectory for like it was like starting to be like everyone was like we're really like rallying behind it. And look, and I mean internationally, I mean there's obviously a lot of discussion around sort of local teams that compete internationally, and then obviously that was at that time sort of, was this 2015? I think it was around 2015, 2016. We took a team from SA up overseas. And like that was, like the trajectory was looking really good, and the game sort of has sort of fallen away. I used to be, I even personally, I'm not as involved in the game anymore. I mean, I don't even play the game much anymore. So the scene itself, I mean, it hasn't grown as much as I would have liked to have seen. I think it was very much a very core, and to Sam's point, there's a lot of communities that are very small but very passionate. And so in terms of, the community, the League community was very passionate, very active. But they have, I personally haven't heard much from that side. The game itself, I mean, I think it sort of moved away from SA. And I think one of those big discussions, and it's a talking point we could spend hours going on about, is the thing around local servers, right? Mm-hmm. And I think one of the, and I don't, we could open that can of worms later. But one of the big things that everyone always has around the debate around games is, League of Legends is looked at as this game is one of the biggest in the world, but never really popped off here, right, to the degree that the rest of the games has. And the big argument has always been, or one of the big arguments has always been, the lack of a local server, right? And League of Legends especially is a kind of game where, you will feel that 180 ping. You will feel the difference from 180 to compared to 30 because the amount of action that you're clicking and pressing, per minute are huge, right? So that's kind of, that's always been one of the big criticisms as to why, or one of the big reasons attributed to why League never really took off. But then, what's exciting is also, and I think that could, it's funny you asked that because I think that actually has also played a role, is the rise of mobile gaming. And mobile gaming to me is it's another contentious issue. Obviously, a lot of people sort of feel that it's not like real gaming because it's on a phone and it consistently usually attracts very much a casual player base. It's been obviously recent times like PUBG. PUBG is huge. The community is absolutely massive. I remember when I did a charity event and one of the games we did was PUBG. The community was there. They were so keen. The messages were being spread across different Discords. The one group that I was invited to had over 1,000 people. It was 1,300 people in that Discord group. So mobile gaming is really starting to blow up. And it's been something that I've advocated for quite a bit. I think when you look at esports in the country, specifically South Africa, obviously we look at the West, right? And we look at the incredible scenes that have been created there. And they also started from a small base. But I've always felt that we need to find our own way to a sustainable, growing esports scene. And obviously let's look at, our dream and where we want to be. But I think the path to getting to the levels of DreamHacks and Katowice and all of the IEMs, to get to those levels, I don't think we're going to follow the same path. I think the landscape in Africa as well, and not just Africa, across Africa is very different. And so I think for me, mobile gaming has been this one thing that I think personally would be a huge boost for the scene overall, because it's accessible. Mobile phones are huge. The mobile penetration in South Africa is massive. Relative to the rest of the world, it's huge, and there's a lot of untapped potential there. And so now you've seen the rise of PUBG and seeing Fortnite as well. Clash of Clans as well, I think, has a scene as well. I think we had one of our local players actually compete to the Red Bull event overseas. I think it was 2 years ago, a year ago. So people have started to look at mobile and taking it more seriously. You're starting to see it starting to creep up at some of the events, some of the expos as well, where there's actually a space for it. And it's ironic because when I one of the early things I started writing about was around the mobile gaming industry, and it gets a bad rap, right, for a reason, because it used to be the way that the games were designed was very much to get to part ways with your wallet, right? To make you part ways with your wallet. That used to be the driving mechanic, the paywalls, the time blocks, all of those obstacles that force you to spend money to keep playing. I think mobile gaming has come such a long way, right? And when I looked at my research years back, it was stuff like when Apple started taking a very serious look at mobile gaming. That never really picked up as much, never really kicked off until obviously now, if you look at sort of what Apple's doing, and they have actually dedicated devs that are building games for mobile, and mobile starting to get the reputation it deserves of being a really great platform that makes gaming more accessible. And I think that's the key thing about it. It makes gaming more accessible for, and more playable for everybody. And so, yes, whilst people look at gaming as it only attracts casuals and not real gamers, I think it's a great platform to build an entire gaming industry on, right? Because it really makes it just equalizes the playing field. And again, and something I've obviously been a huge advocate about for years is diversity in gaming. And I think we've come a long way from where it was. And I think mobile gaming is going to help us really take it to the next level, because it just really opens up the doors for a lot of people to compete with us out that barrier of, the entry to barrier, the huge cost of building a gaming PC, right, that can play, the price of buying a console, right off the bat, never mind then all the internet charges and getting fiber or ADSL. There's a lot of those costs that make playing on those platforms really difficult for the majority of this country. Whereas mobile gaming really just opens it up to everybody and makes it this really beautiful experience. So I have really high hopes for the mobile scene. I think it's just going to grow from strength to strength, and that's a good thing for the scene overall, because when one part is doing well, it really does it works for everybody and brings in more attention, more revenue, more opportunity from brands. So yeah, mobile gaming, I'm a huge fan of it. I think there's a lot of potential there.
Absolutely. In India recently we have started our doing a lot of PUBG events. Take the ESL for example. We just started PUBG Mobile. It's become a huge thing. Like everybody wants to play it. And the point that you put out there, that definitely is one of the reasons why it's so easy to play the game. You have one mobile and you can play it. You don't need a very high-end PC. You don't need to invest a lot of money. It works on any kind of mobile, and that's, I think, the best part about it. Also opened a lot of career choices, not only for commentators or analysts like Sam and me or hosts, but there have been other openings also. And so that's where I come to you, because you're doing something very unique here. You mix art, you mix poetry, you mix film, you make a story out of it. And those are really different kinds of fields and industries to bring together. So, in your opinion, what are the career opportunities that are available outside the current norms?
There's quite a lot, and I think as the mobile space starts to develop more things are going to come out. But like you mentioned, firstly, there's going to be a lot of things outside of the game, just how to make the game work well, right? So I can easily imagine that one of the things that's going to quickly come apart is that people are going to form team managers or organizations, not necessarily to get you, hey, a sponsored rig, but just get you a clean phone that doesn't have anything else installed on it, just has this game. Rent the phone for the weekend, send it back afterwards for the tournament. So there's going to be people that need to be in that space. I'm probably giving it 2 years, I think, before we start seeing exclusively gaming made devices, like devices that are just made specifically for no other purpose but to be able to game on your phone. So there's going to be some innovation jobs that are going to be created in that direction. Within just the esports environment, you're going to have different kinds of promoters, because in the past, generally, if you wanted to be able to spread a game, you needed to first find a community of people that already had the necessary hardware. As the point that Len was making, I think one thing that Len was making, so was saying about like the cost that go into just having your own gaming rig, generally that cost is multiplied by 9, or at least by 5, because if you want to just have a normal team, you have to have 5 other people that have at least that level of investment into this particular thing. However, in the mobile gaming space, that's a bit different. You just need 5 regular phones. So then also being able to get people to understand how to play this game, you just have somebody that can walk through a neighborhood, be like, yo, there's this new game. Everybody download it. Here, guys, we're going to set up some free Wi-Fi for the next couple of hours. As long as, provided you download this game, you're going to be able to do this. So community outreach becomes a lot easier under that purview as well. I think there's also a lot of opportunities for, ironically enough, things as simple as just learning. So a lot of times I know that now with the world as it is, unfortunately, we're finding environments where people are turning more towards having to learn online, live online, work online. And I can very easily see a situation. This might be a small tangent, but the work I'm involved in now, we've been helping some schools get online and things. And we've just recently been able to get some of the courses 0 rated, so that if you are on the specific platform for our work and you're learning from there, you don't have to pay any data charges. There's a massive amount of work there. It took a lot of work out of us to make that happen. I can only imagine if somebody realizes, look, hey guys, we want to host a tournament, but data is really expensive in our country. How are we going to make this tournament affordable and open to entry? Hey, you know what? How about if we have it on this particular server, let's just make sure that for this weekend, for the time period, it's 0 rated. Now you've got some network engineers that have gotten work. You've got some coders that have got work. Everybody's being involved now. And I think another interesting thing in terms of employment that's going to be very bizarre is that now we're seeing that, thankfully, the world of the general big celebrity is kind of dying, thank God. But the role of the influencer is continuing to rise up in the world. And I think there is interesting space within the mobile gaming environment there as well for a new kind of influencer to emerge. We've already been seeing that a lot of people streamers right now have been coining it. I want to see your numbers after this, by the way, Seb. So if there is going to be more of that being available as well, there's now more streamers that can get involved into this, new ways of engaging different communities. And I think another kind of bizarre thing is that, was it last year? No, last month, there was a baptism in Minecraft that happened for the first time that they managed to make do online. Yeah, they built a church, they got water and everything. The person in particular, I think, lived in, I forget if it was in Jordan or Iran, but it was a country where things are kind of dicey for them in terms of religious prospects for Christianity. So they were like, sweet, here's this environment, we're going to make this happen for you, we can get you to service. So in games such as PUBG Mobile, for example, that does have capabilities of doing map editing, you can simply imagine that it's not simply just, hey, new esports dimensions emerge on this platform. It's now literally new worlds. There's going to be somebody, I guarantee at some point, who's going to be living somewhere where they're not allowed to learn about a particular thing or hear a particular political message, but then their parents don't care that much that they're playing games, right? So then it's going to be like, okay, sweet guys, I'm actually going to work. I'm opening PUBG, and inside this mobile platform, I'm opening Minecraft, whatever it might be. Inside the platform itself, there's a new way for other people to be able to access different kinds of messaging that might not be directly connected to what the gaming platform is supposed to do, but we can use the capabilities that the hardware provides, that the software provides, and that just literally new worlds. Like, I can't even fully answer the question because I don't know yet. I lack the full imagination. That's what's so exciting, is that people with better imagination than me are going to find ways to be able to say, all right, guys, here's this open space. So basically giving us a sandbox. What can we do with this? So at this point, the only thing that is clear is that it's going to always help much more than it's going to hurt. The only people who are going to be losing jobs at this point is if you're trying to sell PS4s to people just to play PUBG, then it's like, yeah, you're going to be out of work pretty soon. But everybody else, employment prospects look good, I think, for the future.
Okay, I'm also assuming that if there are two players out there who love each other and play Minecraft, we could see a wedding in Minecraft soon if there is.
There's already been a wedding in Minecraft.
There you go. I would be posting the link, ladies and gentlemen, in the below area. You all can definitely check out this wedding. And if you're a gamer out there, try it out if possible. But looking into the future, of course, because that's where we all are sitting at. We've talked about the past. We know what the present looks like. And Sam, when I look into the future, I notice that at the present time, we have a player base that's massively growing. For PUBG Mobile, for COD Mobile, it's going all over the place. What do you see the future hold in South Africa when it comes to a platform like that?
So I think specifically for South Africa, there's a lot of potential for mobile gaming, but I do think that our current issue is getting people connected and online. So I think a lot of people have the phones, they want to play the games, but the cost of data is really expensive. So it's more of a socio-economic issue that needs to take place. We need to find ways to get more people playing online. When I go out, I meet so many young kids who love video games. They go to their friends' houses so that they can play on their PlayStation. They still go and play the arcade machines at the shop down the road, or they'll go and you can actually now pay and spend an hour on a PlayStation somewhere. They're doing that because they so desperately want to get online and play. Even though they have those phones, the cost of data is just too much. So I think that for our future, we've got the player base and we can definitely grow it. We just need to find a way to get them online. It's a bigger issue than just esports can handle. But I do think if we find a way to get the cost of data down and get more young people connected on their phones, we will see games like PUBG Mobile blow up without a shadow of a doubt. And I think, much like what Glenn said, South Africa has to forge its own way. India did that. So India, if you look at the European way of the CS and the Dota, India's esports scene blew up when PUBG Mobile sort of came in and you've got this huge player base. We need to do this as well. It might not necessarily be the same title, but we need to forge our own story. And I think once we find a way to get more people connected, more people with data, even if it is Wi-Fi areas where they can go play, we're going to see, I think we'll see South Africa's esports scene finally kind of find its voice and find its direction and hopefully take it to the next level.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. When it comes to India, everything was down under the ground till we really had really good internet connection. And the minute our internet became so much cheaper, we saw everybody go online. And of course, COVID being such a horrifying incident, we have seen such a huge rise when it comes to esports and gaming. And Glenn, I would like to hear your thoughts about this, because when we look into the future, there are some things that we have control of and there are some things we don't. We can have the best hosts, we can have the best teams. But in your opinion, what is going to make South Africa really boom out and put their mark globally?
Look, I mean, like I said, I think Sam really kind of touched the points that I would have said as well. I think it's really about finding our own identity. I think, and it's so tricky because another avenue as well, and again, there's so many ways to sort of go about forging this new path and creating this new sort of trajectory for the scene. But I think government is it's a massive part of it as well. I think there's, to Sam's point, there's stuff that gaming can't fix, right? So the idea around connectivity and trying to get data prices down and really trying to get as many people online as possible, that's not the role of gaming to try to fix those things. You've seen people try to do those things regardless, right? I mean, MWB used to have its cave, the MWeb Cave, where people can, go over there to the internet cafe there and play games there, play on consoles there. The internet was provided for. People try to find ways to accommodate people that are unable to connect online or get online in their own personal capacity. And that's that's gone a long way, and that's come from people just being passionate, but again, it's been out of their own pocket, and it's just not sustainable to try to get gaming to fund the connectivity for the rest of the country. So I think a big aspect would be government kind of looking at how do we get connectivity for the rest of the South Africa, or the rest of the country, because that's a huge thing. I think on top of that is, and it's something I've written about in the past, and something I'm very passionate about, is looking at how small scenes punch so far above their weight. Right, and you look at scenes that weren't as developed, and you get obviously those miracle examples where you look at sort of Brazil and CS:GO, Luminosity, that became SK. You look at the guy, Fallen, those guys, and what they've done. It's kind of like they took a scene that wasn't supposed to be that good, and kind of really outperformed and have been consistent and sustainable in doing that. And I think there's lessons to be learned there as well. I think in India as well, you look at sort of the growth of the scene and the growth of the production and the events and what's been done. I think there's so much that we can learn as South Africa and as a country that's so small. And the idea is not to try to just recreate what everyone else has done, but it's looking at what we can do and kind of taking lessons from everything, because there's a lot that we can learn from as well. And I think we're doing that. I really feel like, the scene, at least from when I entered it to where it is now, it's grown so much. From the people that are involved, from the way things are done. Obviously, there's always places to improve and things to work on, and things that don't always go well or go right. But I think the mindset, there's been a change in the mindset, and I think people are trying to be a little bit more collaborative, are trying to reach out and experiment a bit more. For example, like one of the scenes that I think has potential to be great is Rocket League, for example. They have a thriving community. I mean, it's a couple of hundred strong. And so it's kind of like trying to jump into games that people wouldn't normally look at and try to figure out, is there something cool to be done there? And I think COVID has given that opportunity, and obviously not to sound opportunistic, because I mean it's been a very difficult time for everyone, but I think it's forced people to be at home. And when you're at home, you've got more time to think, and you get a larger audience and a more receptive audience. I think people will be more welcoming to games. And I'm finding that in boardrooms, when I'm talking to brands, I'm finding them more welcoming and more comfortable with the idea of looking at getting into gaming. Because there's like this opportunity now it's kind of almost been forced upon people to look at the digital space in a new light, and I think that's going to go quite a long way. I think we've almost kind of been sped up a little bit during this difficult time, because it's allowed for more innovation and more experimentation, and that's what I want to see more of. And again, it's easy for me to say that because I'm not the brand putting up the bucks. But when I'm in the boardroom and when I'm talking to the brands that I work with, I tell them, guys, the beauty about gaming is that it's not this high cost thing. We're not looking to build a stadium and then fill it up with people and play. There's an opportunity to really experiment with low cost, but a huge, a high return. And I think hopefully that's kind of the space that we will see brands sort of go into more, and not let this be a once-off thing. And Sam mentioned it before. Sim racing is like, I mean, it's just. It's absolutely blowing up, and again, it's got an incredible scene. They're super passionate, and you're starting to see sort of brands starting to play in that space. And again, it's something that I don't think people would have necessarily looked at before. But when there's no sports, there's no racing happening, it's kind of opened up this new door and this new opportunity to create something amazing. And I'm hoping that idea of experimenting and that idea of sort of delving into new spaces will continue, beyond this global pandemic that we're in.
Fingers crossed to that one. Hopefully, once this pandemic does end, we will see the age of esports and video games, of course, keep growing. But Snare, that was brings me to my last question. I mean, looking at how things are going with the current trend in South Africa, I guess COVID's hit, but let's remove COVID for a second. Where do you see the scene growing? And if they could just tell me, if all three of you could just tell me one thing that maybe you guys had when you all were at your high peak level of being a professional player that you all didn't get, which today organizations or players get that you really wish you all had
got. Prize money?
Yeah, I used to get headsets to cast, by the way.
That would have been awesome. Let me think. I think one thing that, before I answer this question, I just want to piggyback on something that Glenn was talking about now. And in this time period, as things are going so weird and how people are really focusing on trying to do new things. So I was casting Australian Dota this morning, right? I personally, today, for the first time in my life, learned more than 3 Australian Dota players' names. And I've never cast Australian Dota before. I'm on the stream. Most people have never watched Australian Dota before, but there are almost 1,000 people on the stream. So it's like, oh, okay, cool. Clearly, there is something that not having sports in your life is a lot freeing up time for you to be able to do outside of that context. But I think in terms of the future for South Africa and for India, I like what Sam and Glenn were saying make a lot of sense to me in terms of how we need to forge our own path. And I kind of think that that'll only really become a thing once we have, I don't want to necessarily say it was going to take as long for us to have our own built title, right? Like a purely South African or purely Indian title. But I don't think that we've necessarily solidified the scene identity just yet in terms of what is actually here for us, right? So for now, we know there's a couple of things we know. We know how many people are connected when they play certain, let's say, Dota, Counter-Strike, LoL, Rocket League, etc. We know how many people play FIFA. We know how many people play fighting games, but we don't know what it is that actually fully defines our scene just yet. So as more people start to get connected, that's going to start to take on its own tenor. And I think that's going to help a lot in determining the direction of the scene, because I could easily see several pathways, right? We could end up in becoming one of these superstar sports countries. We're like, look, we race, we play FIFA, that's it. We're really good at this. I mean, at this point, that's where we kind of are, but I'm not certain if that's like our final form just yet. We could be similar to some of these fighting game countries. It's like, yo, what we do is we play fighting games. You come here, you pick up them sticks, you're going to get your ass kicked, but it is what it is. That's how you learn. That's how you roll here. We're probably not going to be MOBA or FPS countries, but with PUBG Mobile, we don't know. More shooting games are definitely going to come out online. As people are playing online as well on their mobile phones, they're also going to discover that there's a lot of card games that people are really good at. And then the gaming and esports scene, obviously, there's not that many card games that are popular in South Africa. But I guarantee if you go to a South African person's house right now and the power goes out, the first thing that comes out is a deck of cards. And we're like, all right, guys, here we go. This is how we're going to roll. All of us, when we're in high school, primary school, came up having to play Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon cards, whatever the case might be. So there was a thriving scene on Hearthstone. We could have a thriving scene for MTG as well. We just really do not know. The thing that we do know is that once we just need the bodies to be there. I personally think that this is a little bit of bias, but I think that we're going to end up being a fighting and sporting country. Just overall, just the people I know, the things I hear people talking about, etc. And these are the games I'm best at, so trying to get back in through this hustle. But I kind of think that we're very community, like in terms of our gaming, it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of surprising that the games that are popular right now are the games that you can play sort of far away from other people and sort of individually. South Africa, as far as I've understood it, as far as I've seen it, the things that drive the most passion are the games that you can play 4 or 5 people in a room together around a pair of controls. Losers out, next person comes in. That has the greatest potential to reach the most people, the lowest overall quote-unquote barrier to entry, and just the most normal, I suppose. So I suspect that that's the direction we're going to go forth. But obviously that requires us to be a bit more connected. And I think just given what our fighting level is at right now, I know one of my friends, I practiced with him in Dragon Ball Fighters, and last week he cracked top 20 global ranking. So he's really good. We have amazing Mortal Kombat players, a bunch of incredible Tekken players, lots of great Super Smash Bros. Players, and obviously all the FIFA. Like, it's kind of incredible that every time in South Africa, you just give people internet. People who've never played online before, all they've played is their friends or their computer. The moment they touch a controller and they're connected, suddenly it's like top 100. This guy is incredible. So with the amount of fighting games and FIFA practice that's happening just for free in the background, once these people are connected, I don't really see any other way that the country's going to go. So, and the fact that these kids can now actually get money for doing this, it's not going to be like us old heads who, I think I'm still owed money from like 7 years ago or something from a tournament. So they get paid, they'll be okay. And I think that's going to make a huge impact in making sure that the scene actually has longevity going into the future, where it's not actually I'd rather have a real amounts of small money than a promise of a large paycheck, but it stays a promise forever. So now we're into the realm of actual truth for these people. So I think that's going to make a huge difference going forward.
I see Snare is really worried about his money. This is the best time for you to come back into the scene, my friend. Go smash some people. Now the money is legit, I promise you. And if you can't make it in South Africa, you're always welcome in India. Here we don't have so many fighting tournaments, but I'm sure you'll do it.
That's actually a good thing because that means that there's fewer competition, so it's easier to win.
Snare, I feel like you're busy building a business plan right now. I feel like that's what you're currently doing. You're busy building an exit strategy right now. Come on.
Sam, even the office open to you. Anytime you feel you want to host a tournament, you can come to India. We have really good internet service.
It is. I think the internet is our biggest downfall. I just want a place where we can play, where we have a constant connection. So I hope that we get it here. Otherwise, I'll come to India just so I can jam. I don't even have to work. I'll just come there to play some games.
Yeah, you can just come and play some games. That's what we do at our office all the time. But with that, of course, thank you so much, guys, for joining me. I had a wonderful time hosting this session with all of y'all. And everybody watching, of course, go ahead, go and send in your questions. Let us know what you think about the show. Also, let us know if there are any certain topics that you have in mind that we should be covering. This, of course, is episode 4 of NODventures. We found out today what's happening in the esports circuit of South Africa. I'm your host, Angela. Go hit that bell icon. But coming up, we're going to have the next episode on Sunday. So please make sure that you go ahead and subscribe and like us, and we will see you then.